Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank the Board of Education for allowing us to present this evening. Tonight, we kick off the much anticipated public presentation component of our 2024-2025 budget process. We're going to talk about the revenue budget, tax cap, property levy, state aid, that sort of thing. We're also going to get into the major non-instructional components of the budget next year. So with me tonight is Andre Rudiak, the Director of Buildings and Grounds, Dawn Russell, our Transportation Director, Argal Villas, our Assistant Superintendent for Compliance and Information Systems, and over there is Joe Tripotto, our Director of Safety and Security, which we'll also be covering. So before we get rolling, I just want to sort of thank everyone, all my colleagues in the business office and district-wide colleagues for all the work and time that went into this. We're not done yet, obviously, but there's a lot of planning, a lot of work that goes into developing a financial plan for the upcoming year. And I'd specifically like to thank and acknowledge Michael Buffamonte, the treasurer in the business office, Lisa Doyle, our payroll manager, and Kathy Fico, the business office, for all their help and support in getting us to this point. One final point, the budget that we're going to look at tonight does not include payroll items, so salary items. We're going to cover that on our March 20th meeting. And so keep that in mind as you look at some of these things. So here's sort of the agenda for the evening, the budget overview, tax cap, state aid. I like to go through and sort of talk about the things that are impacting the budget, sort of a high-level overview. We're going to deal with safety and security budget, buildings and grounds, central printing, data processing, computer-assisted instruction, library media, and finally end up with our transportation budget. So every year I talk about some of the challenges, the developments in putting the budget together. This year I think the discontinuation of the educational stabilization funding is a significant matter. And what I'm referring to here is the monies, the federal monies that were associated with COVID-19. There's really three main areas. It was CARES, ERISA, and ARPA. And so these monies for Monroe-Woodbury amounted to a little over $16 million, so significant money. It enabled us to do a lot of projects, buy equipment, things we ordinarily wouldn't have been able to do. CARES and ERISA are both concluded for Monroe-Woodbury, and ARPA will be concluded in September of 2024. The one thing we were aware of and we didn't do with that money is create a fiscal cliff for ourselves. They warned against that. You don't want to start programs which are ongoing when you have limited money or one-time money. So we didn't do that. But we spent federal monies on summer bridges, which was a program to mitigate learning loss. We spent money on extra tutoring for students, social emotional support for students, PD for staff. We did some work, and we're continuing to do work at the middle school auditorium. It's literally a capital project. We invested money over there. We use federal monies for the pool renovation that we did a couple of summers ago. We bought safety and security equipment. If you remember, we talked a lot about that. The classroom door lock replacement project, that was over $450,000. We used federal monies for that. Radio replacement project, federal monies was used for that, as well as equipment for safety, security, and buildings and grounds. So it was an important funding source. It helped us in a lot of ways, and unfortunately it's ending. Loss of rental income at the Harriman Center. So you may be aware we're renting part of the Harriman Center to the village of Harriman. They're in the process of constructing a new village hall right across the street. So we anticipate they would vacate that property sometime in late spring or early summer. So that's about $80,000 annually we're receiving revenue, which would go away. I think the other piece of that is having someone, a tenant in the Harriman Center, is actually has value for us. It kind of keeps the building in good shape. Someone's watching the building, monitoring the building, and once they vacate, we'll have to sort of reevaluate what the long-term plan for that property is. Increasing contract transportation. So that's been an ongoing theme the last few years in these budget presentations. Dawn will talk much more about that. But we continue to see a growth in enrollment, and we're projecting out at about 24%. So that means the number of students we're providing transportation to, principally to non-public schools. And there's also, I have in here, the inflationary CPI factor. So we have contracts with contractors. When we renew these contracts, there's an inflationary factor at CPI that's applied to that. So obviously inflation's been high, the CPI value has been high. So both the number of units of transportation, if you will, is increasing, the number of pupils we're transporting is increasing, and the price of the transportation is increasing, continues to increase for next year. We're anticipating another substantial increase there. 24-25 health insurance premiums. So in past years, this has been a bigger deal than this year. We're looking at a 3% premium increase, which is manageable, I would say. It's still about $900,000 for Monroe-Woodbury in our budget, which is significant. I like to sometimes just point out what the premiums are. So for an individual for next year, it's about $14,112. The two-person, which is a relatively new category, is just under $31,000, and the family plan is just under $35,000. So we have cost sharing with employees, but it's still a big number and a big piece of our budget. The Orange Ulster BOCES capital project. So we talked a lot about that last year. So that is starting to pick up speed and momentum. So the impact on our budget for next year is an increase of about $238,000. So we're going about $940,000 to a little under $1.2 million in the budget for next year. And I believe there's one more increase in store for us until that is fully in place and underway. And then that would be, as we discussed, an ongoing component in our budget for the next 15 or 20 years. ERS, employer contribution rate increase. So the district participates in the teacher retirement system and the state and local retirement system, also called ERS. So we're looking at an increase in the ERS rate, and it varies depending on the tier the employee is in, so it's a little complicated, but it's on average going from 15% to about 17%. So for every dollar an employee in the ERS system earns, we send 15 cents to the retirement system and retirement fund. So that's significant. I would say we haven't worked it all out yet, but that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $400,000 to $500,000 hit on the budget. And again, one of those things, no control over. We have no say in that. That is determined entirely by the retirement systems based on the performance of financial markets, actuarial calculations, et cetera. State aid changes. So foundation aid is finally fully phased in. So we've talked about that for the last few years. It's been very beneficial for Monroe-Woodbury. We've seen some big increases in foundation aid because of that phase-in of the formula. It's interesting. So the first year that it's fully phased in, Governor Hochul has proposed tweaking the formula to pull it back a little bit. And I'll get into some more detail on that. But we're still seeing an increase, so we'll get into some detail on that in just a moment. And finally, I just have expiring contracts. So not a big deal, but we have expiring contracts with the administrators unit and the MWEAs, the clerical, safety officers, food service workers. So just creates a little uncertainty in the budget on where we're going to end up. So any questions on that slide? Okay. So everybody's favorite is the slide that covers the 2% tax cap, and I will move through this quickly. But for those who don't know, the tax cap is a limit on the annual growth in the property tax levy, right? And it's applicable in New York State to villages, towns, cities, counties, and school districts. So local government is limited in how much they can raise their levy. It's a multi-step formula, as you can see. There are exclusions to the cap, so there are things you say, these expenses are totally out of our control, like, for instance, the employer contribution rate for the New York State retirement system is sort of a high bar, but so these exclusions you're able to add back in, and ultimately you get to something called your maximum allowable levy. So that's the limit that you're by law mandated to go to. You can override that limit, though, with more than 60% of the voters in the case of a school district. In the case of a local government, they just need 60% of the board to approve an override to the cap. The other thing I like to point out at this point is school districts are the one municipal entity that actually literally puts their general fund budget, which is what we're talking about, before the voters for approval. Otherwise, municipalities it's approved by the boards, or the legislative body in the case of a county. So walking through the tax cap, we begin with the prior year tax levy. So in this case, it's $129,074,842. So that's the current year levy. We apply a tax base growth factor. So that growth factor accounts for changes in the tax base. So in other words, if we had a new mall, Woodbury Commons expands, it's a way for the local municipality to tax that new growth in the tax base, if you will, brick and mortar growth.
Patrick, I have a question on that.
Yes.
You used Woodbury Commons. It's my understanding they don't pay tax. They're on an exemption.
That's actually not true.
Okay.
There was a point in time where they did have a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes, but that has expired.
And that won't be applied to the extension that they're putting on?
Pardon?
That won't be applied to the extension? They're doing a big add-on?
Well, that is to be determined. So I think whenever you have new construction and you're growing the tax base, you're adding something new, the idea of a pilot is open to discussion. And there's a property tax exemption. It's called the business investment exemption, which is similar to a pilot. So you can do that. You can do a pilot through the Industrial Development Agency in Orange County, and they'll probably go the IDA route. And there's a schedule associated with the IDA about the exemption. And it depends on the nature of the improvement as well. Certain types of improvement, if it was, I'm going to make this up, a pharmaceutical facility or let's say IBM, a fab where they're really high-tech jobs, high-paying jobs, is going to be a huge impact. That gets a bigger exemption than a warehouse, that kind of thing. So that's to be determined.
Thank you.
I think.
But the district doesn't determine that.
No.
We don't issue those.
We do not. The Industrial Development Agency for Orange County does. We have input. We don't have the authority to ultimately decide. That county agency makes that decision, which is, affiliated and associated with the county government, county legislature.
Okay, thank you.
We have to decide when you vote, to vote for the proper people
Right.
to be in office.
Right.
Indirectly, we
Who pays and who
Indirectly-
doesn't pay doesn't
indirectly,
get this.
that's the voice.
Right.
Yeah.
right. Anyways, moving on.
Sorry.
So we left off with the tax base growth factor, and for us, it's 1% for next year. So the assumption is the tax base is growing by, the brick and mortar by 1%. That's provided by the New York State Department of Tax and Finance. We add back the prior year pilots. We subtract the prior year exemption. So I'm going to use the word exemption, exclusion. It means the same thing. It's those things that are added back to this at the end.
Would that be that increase in the teacher's retirement fund that you were talking about?
It would be that.
Okay.
It's principally capital expenses minus any state aid. So we have debt service and there's building aid associated with it. So that net difference is an add back. Our buses are capital expense. They can be an add back less the transportation aid. When it's more than 2 percentage points change in the employer contribution rates for TRS or ERS, that is an exclusion. It's pretty rare, but actually there is one for this year.
Okay.
Let's see. So we have our adjusted prior year levy, and here in the middle of the formula, I have a red box around it, is where the allowable growth factor. So that is the 2% in the 2% tax cap, and it's 2% or CPI, whichever is less. So for this year, it's 2%. CPI is about 4.1%. And so we've talked about this, that this is sort of the problem with the formula, is for the first, I think the formula went into place in 2011. So let's say for the first 9 years of its existence, there was low inflation, so it wasn't an issue. Now we have high inflation. And so you're limiting that growth to 2% when everything costs 6% more, or 4% more in this case. Hopefully that's trending down. So you apply that 2%, you subtract your coming year pilots, and you have your tax levy limit right here. So for our case, it's $132,235,766. So then we add the coming year exemptions or exclusions. And for us, for next year, that number is fairly high. It's atypical for it to be this high, 3.3 million, because we went out with a 0% levy increase last year. So I want to point that out to everybody, remind everybody. Here in the lower right-hand corner, I'm showing last year's tax cap was 2.8%. We went out with a 0% increase in the levy. So based on that, we're able to carry forward some of last year's increase as part of our exclusion. So it's a little under $2 million. So that, plus the BOCES, the increasing BOCES capital expense, there's a small ERS exclusion this year, Michael, like you were alluding to that. But the biggest thing is the carryover from last year. So the exclusion is 3.3 million, giving us a maximum allowable levy of 135,572,042. So that's a 5.03% increase. So let's call it a 5% increase. Now that's not to say that's what we're going to levy at, or we're going to need to increase the levy by, but that's the computation of our tax cap for next year. Any questions? Okay. Moving on. So I just want to talk a little bit about the governor's budget and the proposal specifically for P12 education. I alluded to this, that the governor has tried to tweak the foundation aid formula a little bit. So the proposal provides for an $824.7 million increase in aid to school districts. Under current law, however, the increase would be $1.2 billion. So my understanding is there's a gap in the state budget. It's about $4.5 billion. State aid to schools makes up about 27% of the operating budget, so they're tweaking that foundation aid formula to try to close their own budget gap. The foundation aid was affected in two ways. So number one, if you recall last year, mercifully I will not put it up again, I put up a foundation aid formula diagram, and there was a component, Elsie just thanked me, that's good, you're welcome. There was one of those boxes that dealt with CPI. So in other words, it was accounting for inflation. And so what the governor has proposed is to replace that single year inflation factor, which is currently 4.1%, with a 10-year average with the highest and lowest years trimmed off. So with that formula change, it would be 2.4% increase. So that's number one. That affects Monroe-Woodbury. So that lowers our foundation aid a bit. The other thing that the governor has proposed is tweaking the save harmless provision, which basically what that does is it provides a floor for districts where they will never receive less foundation aid than, I think it's like the prior year, like there's a floor. So what that does, in fact, and I've alluded to this before too, with foundation aid, there were a lot of wealthy districts that were actually receiving more foundation aid than they were entitled to based on the formula. And this save harmless provision sort of prevented them from actually getting the foundation aid they were due. It limited it. So what the governor has proposed is running the formula, you have the floor, and then you get 50% of the difference. So it's harming, in a way, 337 districts in New York State to the tune of $167.9 million. So we'll see what happens. That's affecting so many districts. That's the kind of thing, and the money isn't huge. It sounds huge, but $167 million is not in the state budget a big deal. So that, who knows, that might go away. But that's how the governor has sort of tweaked the state aid. Expenditure-based aid programs, and there's a lot of those. We've talked about that. It's transportation, it's BOCES, it's all the instructional materials aid, it's building aid. All those sort of reimburse after the fact aids, intact, fully funded, which is great. The zero-emission bus aid proposal, so as it stands now, if you receive federal monies or any other grant monies for your zero-emission buses, so remember we're now mandated, the law is that by 2027, any new bus we buy needs to be zero emission, electric, basically. After 2035, the entire fleet needs to be changed over. So this is gargantuan. I mean, Dawn is, right? You're right, Dawn?
I'm so happy to retire.
This is a big deal. It's a big deal on so many levels. It's a big deal because the buses are twice as expensive, zero emission versus ordinary buses, conventional buses. There's a lot of electric infrastructure that needs to be built. There's limited range to these buses. I mean, there are so
They're
many.
also heavier. They're a lot
Heavier.
heavier.
There's so many-
Roads, we're not sure if roads will be able to
Right.
sustain the weight
Exactly.
of the.
Layer upon layer, right,
Yes.
with this.
Awesome.
And so this was one of the limits where they were saying if you got a grant, you can't receive transportation aid. You can't double dip in essence. This would allow us to do that, which is good news because everything about this proposal is expensive, very expensive. And then the final piece I was going to mention is the retiree income waiver. So this is the thing where retirees are able to, they have been able to work. Typically, there's an earning limit of $35,000. So they waive that until 2024. We thought it might be June 30th. We thought it might be extended. It's not. So it's
Not.
going to be over.
So some of us who are retiring can't come back to work.
I know you're heartbroken.
Depends how old you are, right? If you're
35,000.
65, you can.
Yeah, for a very low fee.
No, but that's,
5,000.
34,990.
Yeah.
okay, so moving on. Unless there's any questions or comments on that. I know there's a lot there. I'll just show you this. This is the actual state aid runs that we received. So this, our district is, it's within Orange County, obviously. It's page 87 of this giant document. It's a little difficult to read and interpret, but the upper half of this column is the current year. And these are the aids, the various kinds of state aid on the left-hand side. And then the projection for next year is here in the lower half of the column. And what's, a couple of notable things, I would say you see the projection right now, the current year, 2023, 2024, foundation aid, 60.2 million. We were looking at an increase from up to 62.4 million, which is great. The other notable things I would point out here, this is quite misleading, the universal pre-K line. So for the current year, it shows 2.6 million. We're not getting anywhere near that. What the state has done is they include a number as if you're serving every eligible child in your school district. So we're not getting that much aid. They've actually, to be honest with you, I'm not even sure how they changed the formula, but now for next year, they're showing our UPK aid as 5.5 million. So when you add this down, it's quite misleading because we're not receiving 5.5 million. We
Not
will
even near that.
Right, not even close. The other notable thing I would point out here, and I'm going to get into it a little more deeply, is this transportation aid number, 15.1 million. Above, it shows 13.3. I can barely make it out. So that's a big increase, but it's actually in the next slide, it's even a larger budget-to-budget increase. And that's how I look at aid. We look at all this stuff budget to budget. It's the flip side of the increase in transportation expenses we've been talking about. The escalation in the contract transportation, servicing more students and things, that eventually, we've said this, the transportation aid goes up too. So it is happening, and that is, the silver lining of the increases in expenses. So let's move on. So this is just
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you want me to ask it now or wait?
Yep, go ahead,
So
Stacey.
can you just elaborate or tell us the breakdown as far as what we received for the pre-K aid versus what it's actually costing us? And I think it's important to stress the piece that Elsie just mentioned also, because as a board member, that is a question that I get from the community is, why is there still a wait list? I thought it was eligible for all, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's important for people to understand that while it is a wonderful program, we, Monroe-Woodbury, do not have the space allowable to open up to the need that we have.
Right.
So while it is a great program, there's not necessarily the space to actually run it. Is that accurate?
Yes, and there's a local component to it. So we're receiving, I don't have the numbers handy, like just at my fingertips, somewhere around 5,600, I think, per pupil. We're using community vendors, we're using some outside vendors, and also doing this at Sapphire Elementary. But on average, our cost per pupil is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of, I would say, 7,500, maybe 8,000. So there's a local component to this, and as we serve more students, the general fund has to absorb that difference. We also used, in the last few years, some federal money to support that. We've actually started to add that back into our budget, so we didn't create a fiscal cliff for ourselves. But that also sort of softened the blow of starting those programs.
But we also have, so we have two programs, right? We have our in-house program.
That's right.
Which the cost is different.
Yep,
And what we have in others are neighboring community
Right.
programs.
outside providers.
So, right, outside providers. So I think you said that the cost was $7,500 or maybe $8,000 for,
On average,
I
right?
think it's like $8,000 for, because we just did an
The vendors.
RFP.
For the vendors.
What are we paying for the vendors?
We pay about $8,100.
So 81.
Well, it costs $8,100. We don't pay the full $8,100 because that's minus
Offset the
contribution
money
from the
that we
state.
get, but it's not all paid for by the state.
No,
Right.
that's the bottom line.
Right, so then we have to come in as a district and supplement that cost.
Yes.
And I just
Absolutely.
want to clarify.
Which also
'cause I know
includes for
it's-
the in-house, I'm sorry, for the in-house costs.
Right.
That includes salaries and benefits of.
Which is not costing us $8,100.
Correct, right.
Right, but I just want to verify, when you're saying a vendor to the public, those are the outside preschools that have put in that they are willing to participate in this program.
Correct. In this district, we have Kids Corner.
Currently
Kids
have
Corner,
two vendors,
correct.
preschools, that are participating in this outside program.
Yes.
Are we and we have, I think, 3 sections in-house, is that accurate?
We do.
yes.
We have
Okay.
3 at Sapphire.
So technically 5 sections, are we looking?
No,
at-
we have 3 in-house.
3
We have
in-house.
2 at Kids Corner.
Okay,
We currently have 1, possibly 2 at Little Pals, depending on enrollment, so.
so for next year, possibly 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do we think we can increase that more, or is that what we're looking at?
That's what we're looking at for right now. And because the other piece is with the $5 million in state aid that we just heard about, the state says, oh yeah, Monroe Woodbury, you have $5 million, but you're only allowed to spend $5,600 per student. So
Right.
we could say, hey, look, we'll take all that $5 million and spend it the way we want to, but we're limited in terms of what we can actually
But we
spend.
pay what they provide us per child.
Right.
So
Correct.
even though that looks like a large sum of money,
Mm-hmm.
it's not what it cost us per child. And so, and those costs will continue to grow.
That's right.
And it's also, I'm sorry, just one other thing. It's also important to note, $5,600 per student may go a longer way in other parts of New York State than they do in this area. So the cost of childcare or pre-K care is much higher here than it might be in western New York or way upstate New York, where that 5,600 number might be more in line with what it costs.
That should be a formula that maybe they look to tweak as well.
And
Wow.
just to complicate more things, there's something called old pre-K money
Right.
and new pre-K money.
There's multiple programs.
So there's multiple programs that go out there. So we're considered new pre-K money, which is different than old pre-K money.
Okay.
What you're allowed to use the money for.
Correct.
Right.
And these numbers are based on per pupils, the number of pupils you serve multiplied by a value, 5,600 or whatever it is. That's how you get to that. So we don't get $5 million or $5.5 million unless we serve a huge number of kids.
Right, which I spoke to Senator Skoufis when he said, I'm giving you $5 million, where are the children? I said, I don't have that many children to serve.
Right.
Even if we try to. So I think their number is skewed because they've included other students that would not be going to our program.
And I think one of the things, Stacey, that you may hear from people in the community, especially as people move up from New York City, every child in New York City is eligible to
Correct.
take part in their preschool program. So they have their pre-K 3s, they have their pre-K 4s, and they don't, the people who send their kids there don't have to pay for that. So we get phone calls in my office saying, I don't understand, I just came up here, why doesn't every kid have access to that? And part of it is a financial reality that we have to factor.
And if we served enough kids to get $5 million, we'd have to have 3 in the general fund. We'd have to increase the general fund by $3
$3
million
million.
to serve, that number.
To offset the difference.
Correct. To fully fund it, to really fund it. And it's a blended average between the outsourcing and then our in-house program as well, so
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, so this is just a schedule that shows our budgeted numbers, And so we have the same, types of aid on the left-hand side, foundation aid. We can see the number here, 62.4 million is the proposal or the projection for next year. And 60.6 million is what we budgeted for this year. If I go back, if I go back to this slide, you see the upper half is the current year, 23-24. This is showing 60.2 million. So between last year and this year, we've got less foundation aid because the numbers can change, the enrollment can change. It's fairly complex. Usually foundation aid is the most stable of all the aids, but even that in that year period went down. And so it's good news. We're looking at an increase in the foundation aid. The BOCES aid, the high cost, private excess cost aids are difficult to, fully understand. The BOCES are reimbursement aid, but it's again a projection. The instructional materials aid, hardware, technology, software, library, and textbook, pretty similar to where they were in the current year budget. The transportation aid is the one that I wanted to just spend a minute on. So this is a budget number, $10.2 million with a projection of $15.1 million. So that's great news. We're receiving more transportation aid because we're experiencing big increases in transportation expenses, right? Being driven by our non-public enrollment, et cetera. And when you might say, well, how could that be? How could we be so far off? How could it go from 10 million to 15? Well, when you think about this $10.2 million projection last year when we did the budget a year ago, it was literally based on the summer of 2022. So we finish a fiscal year, and in the summer, the state requires us to submit the financial results from the past year. So in the summer of 22, we submitted our 21-22 results, and part of that, those are actual values, is projecting what we think the upcoming year will be, what kind of expenses we will have. So in summer of 22, we're projecting 22-23 expenses, and this is before some of these transportation expenses started to really take off and increase a lot. And that projection for 22-23 is then used, because that expense is then the state aid in the following year. So that would be our state aid in 23-24. I know that's a difficult idea to understand, but it's almost like a 2-year lag, and we saw some big increases. It accelerated quickly. And I think that's why, I look back, this was literally, the projection last year was 10.2. We're going to receive 13.3 for this year, if you go back. And that's what I'm saying, like, state aid is not set in stone. These expense-based aids can move around a little bit in their projections. The one that's the most stable is foundation aid, and even that changed by $400,000 in the current year. The other thing that's notable here a little bit is the building aid, the decrease in building aid. So we're going from 4.3 million to 3.7 million. And I talked a lot about this during the discussion of the capital proposition, where our debt service was falling away. We're saying we're paying off our existing debt, but you're also losing the building aid that was associated and was, linked up with that. And that's what we're seeing here, is some of that building aid is starting to go away as well. Not the final line, but the final line here before we total this is the MW state aid adjustment. So what I like to do is I look at all these factors and then make an adjustment, because so much of this is a projection. It's not locked in. And so I'm suggesting or recommending that we increase the adjustment, the local adjustment, from 2.5 million to 2.7, giving us a budget total of 88.7 million. So that's good news. Compared, relative to the budget of 81.5, that's a $7.2 million increase. So that's good news for Monroe Woodbury in the state aid department, so to speak. So let me keep going. Any questions? I know that's sort of difficult to understand, and the multi-year thing was, I probably could have done a better job on that, but just conveyed the point that it's projections, and it's not always locked in. So here is the ever-popular budget triangle. I take a lot of flack for putting this up every year. It's the budget triangle with a hypothetical budget. And so the point here is to just show that there's inequality, right, between revenue and appropriations, which is a fancy name for your budget. And based on that, we have our instructional program. So up in the upper left-hand corner, we have our revenue. We have our state aid, 88.7 million. I just showed that was the recommendation. We have miscellaneous revenue of 3.1 million. So that can be revenue from charging other districts for tuition, health services for other districts. It can be the sale of equipment. It can be the rental of the Harriman Center, all kinds of things. And what I also included in that miscellaneous line, because this is a hypothetical budget, is about $700,000 in assigned fund balance. So if we took our state aid projection, we took our miscellaneous revenue, and then we increased our levy by 2%, hypothetical budget, that gives us $223,608,25. And if we took that number and brought it across to the appropriations side of the equation, and we said our budget was going to be $223.6 million, that would be a budget-to-budget increase of $10.4 million, or 4.92%. So the idea is, with those assumptions in this hypothetical budget, that's sort of what we have to work with, so to speak, in the appropriations side of things. We're not done with the budget, a lot of pieces that are not in place. We still have a lot of work to do, but I like to go big picture to see where we stand and, frankly, if we have a problem or not. And so far, things look okay.
So we're 11 basis points short of the 5.03 that was calculated on
Right.
the beginning.
That's right. So that's good news.
Yeah,
We don't
it's
even
pretty
have to be close to it.
Comparatively,
Yeah.
where it could be much worse.
Right. Okay. So moving on, so we're going to shift now to the appropriation side of the budget. We're going to talk about the the functional areas for my colleagues here. But I'd like to just talk a little bit, just for a couple of minutes, about the anatomy of a budget code. What does this mean? So there's 4 pieces to a budget code in New York State, and the first piece is called the functional area. So we're going to talk about buildings and grounds. Andre's going to talk about that in a moment. That's 1620. That's part of the state prescribed chart of accounts. That's the same any district you went to in the state. Safety and security is 1622. Bargov is going to talk about printing, data processing, IT-related things. That's 1600s. 2 is anything instructional, so 2110 is teaching, 2610 is library, 2630 is computer assisted instruction. Anything that the functional code that begins with a 55 is transportation. So 55, 10, 30, and 40 we're going to go through. So that's a function code. The object code is sort of the object of the expenditure. So salaries always begin with a 1, equipment 2, and so on. Location codes are specific to a district or organization. So for Monroe-Woodbury, 1 is our high school, 10 is Sapphire Elementary School, district-wide is 09, and then program codes, the last part of a budget code, are specific to the district as well. So we use that to say the math program, any budget code associated with math is going to end in 4200, that kind of thing. So we can sort things, we can run queries based on those codes. So that's the sort of the overview of a budget code. And that's all I had on the intro. So I'm going to talk about safety and security. Any questions on anything? Just went over. I know we covered a lot. Okay, so moving on, I'm just going to talk about safety and security very quickly. I mentioned it's 1622 is the function code for that. And we did this last year. I'm just going to quickly run through what are the objectives, what are the tasks, what are the things we do in the security department on a day in and day out basis. So support and assist building administration, keeping the building safe, keeping things orderly, healthy school environment, supporting school arrivals and dismissals, support district athletic and extracurricular events. Obviously, we provide security at those events. Operate the visitor management system, screening visitors to the buildings. monitor school congregate areas, so this is hallways, cafeterias, making sure everything is orderly and safe, intervene when there are problems, when there are disruptions and things, monitor district-wide camera systems, so we have about 278 cameras now. And the great thing about security cameras, they enable us, particularly at the high school, middle school, to sort of leverage our people. So we can have one person that can actually monitor 10 different locations using the camera systems. We use cameras for after-the-fact investigatory purposes. And finally, we have new digital radios. So we distribute, configure, maintain those new digital handheld radios. 321 radios were distributed very recently. And the underlying system that is associated with that. There's repeaters and things. And that's one of those things that we use that federal money for, to subsidize that. So that's safety and security in a nutshell. Let's just shift to this budget overview schedule. And again, this does not show the salaries and the personnel costs. We're going to do that on March 20th. So bottom line up front, Bluff, we're looking at a less than 1% increase, budget-to-budget increase. It's 0.4% increase in the safety and security budget. I would say the notable things here under security equipment, we're proposing an increase from $50,000 to $70,960, and that's to fund the Swipe K-12 scan kiosk. So we want to add 8 kiosks to the high school. I think principally the bathrooms. Other equipment in that line would be purchases of additional cameras, Raptor units, those are things that we occasionally need, and the evaluation of exterior strobe lights on the buildings, which would be activated in the event of an emergency. The other thing, the budget's relatively flat or decreasing. The other thing I would just point out is the security professional fees. So that covers our school resource officers, the costs associated with that. So we're decreasing that by about $15,500 to account for the idea that there were more upfront costs when we initially started the program for equipment and uniforms. So we've seen those expenses trend down a little bit. So the final thing here I put on here was the future budgetary consideration. So we've started to assess, Joe's done a lot of work with assessing a panic button alarm system with an individual card or fob. Is that for Barbara? Thank you. We're still in sort of the evaluation process, but it would enable individual staff members to activate an alarm and/or call for help, if you will. And so that's not actually included in the budget. I would say it's a relatively expensive item. You know, it's not ridiculous, but we need to spend a little more time to evaluate it. But part of that was something Governor Hochul had put in that she wanted school districts to consider and evaluate. It's not a mandate, panic alarm system. So that would be something that we're in the process of doing, and that would sort of check that box as well. So that's future budgetary consideration.
So it says here, it was mandated for us to consider it. So
That's right.
It's not a mandate.
It's not a mandate.
Correct.
It's mandatory consideration,
Nice
Michael.
talk.
It's mandatory consideration.
You don't have to do it, but just mandate, think about it.
You can say no, thank you. So that's it, pretty straightforward on the security budget for next year. Upcoming key budget dates, so March 1, we submit the tax cap information to the Office of State Controller, and we can revise that because, you know, we're not done yet. March 20th is going to be a big board night with presentations. We're going to do personnel and benefits and instructional programs. Superintendent's budget recommendation, April 18th, and board adoption, April 29th. Property tax report card, budget statement published to district website. We'll have a public hearing on May 8th, and on May 15th, mail out the notice and the informational pamphlet to the residents of the district. And the big day, May 21st, is the statewide budget vote day, also known as the district meeting, annual meeting. That's all I had. So, any questions or comments?
No.
Okay, great. So I'm going to pass this over to Andre Rudiak, who's going to give us an overview of the Buildings and Grounds budget for next year.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me present the Buildings and Grounds budget for 2024-25 school year. I would like to begin with thanking my entire department for their support to the district and myself, and also for going above and beyond every single day. With that said, operation and maintenance overview. So we had last year, or this year, 79.5 positions in my department. We are proposing the same for next year, which is 7 in management, 55.5 in custodial, 8 in grounds, 9 in maintenance. With that said, custodial staff cleans roughly 1 million square feet nightly. That equals to 3,000 square feet houses, or 6 3,000 square feet houses per staff member. 229 acres maintained by 8 ground staff, or 29 acres per person, in addition to preparing the playing fields for school and community sports. With over 1,260,000 total square feet, our maintenance staff preserves the district investment in facilities, contributes to the educational mission by ensuring facilities are comfortable, safe, and secure. That helps students, teachers, and staff reach their potential. Project that we did in this past year, I'm going to start with district-wide projects we did to ensure safety and security for our students. So these projects were done in every single school. So we did replace door locks so that our classroom now can be locked from inside without the key. We installed shades in all the classroom doors. We numbered all the exterior doors, and we installed classroom numbers on rescue windows. In addition to that, in the high school, we replaced stair treads on staircase number 4 from A level to D level. We paved and restriped the parking lots. In the middle school, we did pave the side parking lot. We seal coat and restriped all the other parking lots. We painted white columns and overhangs under the roofs, the entire building, on the exterior. Installed new gas meter and relocation of the service to the building. And we also built and installed new shelf storage units for the music department in one of the music rooms. In Central Valley, we installed new shades in all the classrooms on their windows. We renovated the computer lab in 500 wing. We installed new LED lights in all the hallways. We installed new condensate tank in 400 wing boiler room. At Pine Tree, we paved and restriped parking lots. We installed new LED lights in the parking lot. We installed new hot water storage tank. We replaced 200 feet of sewer line. We installed new floor, replacing old floor in one of the classrooms. In North Main, we installed new window shades in all the classrooms and replaced several exterior doors, and we repainted cafeteria and kitchen hallway. In Sapphire, we installed a new floor, replacing old floor tiles in 3 classrooms. At Smith Clove, we paved the parking lot on top. We resealed coat the lower parking lot and restriped. We installed 3 new exterior doors. At MCC, we renovated the downstairs bathroom. We installed new floor in the lower level. We replaced the sewer line from the building to the septic tank, and we replaced 2 exterior doors. At the education center, we seal coat and restriped the parking lots. We installed new interior doors and locks. At the bus garage, we replaced 7 exterior doors and renovated the men's bathroom. So that was a lot happening this year, as you see. Renovation projects for 2024-25 school year. At the high school, staircase 1, rubber stairs to be replaced on staircase number 1, carpet replacement in the main office, Pine Tree asbestos floor removal in the records room that's in the basement, and district-wide building improvements, which could vary from repairing boilers, which we have a lot of trouble lately with it, and possibly to do water softener installation or replacement at the middle school. With that said, the budget overview for Buildings and Grounds Department, which is 1620 code. We can start with 1500 code, which is management. Last year adopted budget was $175,150. We're proposing $104,950 for this year. Percentage change is negative 40.08%. Dollar change value is negative $70,000. $1,200. The reason for decrease in that code is we were paying for rental of the bathrooms by the football field on each side of the grandstands. We purchased new bathrooms, which should be delivered around in the middle of April. So that cost is no longer be occurring, so that's why that code goes down that amount. 1600 code is a custodial code. Last year adopted budget was $439,500. We're proposing $463,585. Percentage change is 5.48%. Dollar change value is $24,085. The reason for that increase is the increase of supplies, cleaning supplies, paper towels, paper bags, all that's going up. We're also buying 2 auto scrubbers for 2 different buildings. 1700 code, it's grounds code. Last year adopted budget was $259,171. We're proposing $361,833. The percent change is 39.61%. Dollar change value is $102,662. The reason for that change in that code is we had 2 11-foot cut Jacobson tractors. One died, was already obsoleted. The second one, we brought it to the dealer. His advice was the turbo on that machine doesn't work. There is no parts available for that machine no longer. So he said, use it till it dies. I did ask a question, how long is it gonna last? He said it could be week 2 or month or 2 or 3, but they can't give us a projection. So I'm proposing to buy new Toro mowing machine, 11-foot cut. Also in that code, I'm proposing to buy the toolcat machine, which we're using to groom our turf fields and also to bring the stage, the chairs, the platforms for the graduation to the turf field. That machine also comes with the snowblower attachment, which helps us in the high school to blow. We have a lot of attachments for that machine because we have the older version of that machine, but it's kind of dying, so it makes sense to buy the same machine. This way I don't have to buy attachments for it because we already have it. 1800 code is this maintenance code. Last year adopted budget was $1,779,300. We're proposing $1,929,832. Percentage change is 8.46%. Dollar change value is $150,532. In that code, I'm also proposing to buy the maintenance truck for the maintenance person with the plow. We have a Chevy who is 2008 truck. The plow already doesn't work on it. Plus the increase of all the supplies for maintenance, the inspection, the contractor repairing stuff, it doesn't go down. So that's the reason why that increase is there. In 1900 code, that's a building improvement code. It was $300,000 last year. It's the same this year. There's no change there. 2000, it's utility code. Last year adopted budget was $3,213,884. We're proposing $3,214,911. The percent increase on that is 0.03%, which dollar change is $1,027. Overall, last year adopted budget was $6,167,005. We're proposing $6,375,111. Percent change is 3.37%. Dollar change value is $208,106. With that said, budget goal for 2024-25 school year is to continue to maintain a high level of cleanliness and maintenance in the district and facilities. Maintenance of capital improvement in the district, facilities, and the fields, and also continue to work on a capital project, which I want to thank everybody for approving and voting for. Very much needed. With that said, are there any questions?
First of all, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anything above that could have happened in the capital improvement project, or is everything that's been noted completely separate? So, with capital improvement, we get a big chunk back. So some of these improvements I see for renovation for next year, like staircase, for example, it couldn't have gone into capital improvement.
We did not include that in the capital project when we talked about it. So we did one last year, and if you go to the high school and you're going to see the rubber on the stair treads, they are completely peeling off. So we're trying to do at least one staircase a year, so spend it over 4 years instead doing at one shot. But also we did not include that in the capital project.
And I guess at this point, we're not able to put anything else in it other than what was already identified.
We're on the very front of a stage of that capital project. We don't know how far the money is going to carry us. It's a 4 or 5 years going forward, so it's hard to predict if we're going to have money or not.
The other thing I would point out with that too is sometimes it's more like a repair, like so we're taking the treads off because of the
Correct.
problem. So it doesn't necessarily qualify in the same way
As a replacement.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, capital projects.
I have a quick question actually about these staircases. Are the old ones peeling off because they're old, or these new ones, they won't peel off if students try to attempt to pull them off?
So what happened with it?
This issue before.
I will ask students not to try to peel them off, which I know it happens all the time. Doesn't make
Yeah.
our lives any easier than it is.
Is there like are we able to place any warranty on these so that they can, if they are peeled off in the future,
So-
it can be an easy fix?
So if you think the high school is over 22 years old, the glue dries up with the heat. That will happen the same thing with your carpet in your house. If you glue your carpet to the thing, after a while, it's going to start loosening up because we also mopping those staircases every single night. In the summer, we actually scrubbing the entire staircase from A to D level with more water than normally. So that the water tends to go also underneath of the glue, dissolving, the consistency of the glue. And over age, the glue just doesn't hold
Yeah.
forever, so they start peeling it off.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does any of this tackle some of the room regulation? Like some rooms are very hot and some are very cold. So is that more a capital project or is that some of this that you show here?
So there is two components to it. Some is repairs. So if the valve on the univentilator goes bad, that comes from our supply. Our maintenance guys go in and replace the valve, and we make it back to working condition. Some of it is that we're going to talk about the capital project replacing boilers or univents and programming thing, but everything ages. So it's very hard with the steam heat. It's very hard to regulate. We're trying the best that we can. So there's always a fluctuation there. But part of it is the equipment is very old. So we think it works the way it should, but there's maybe from 100% working, maybe it's 80% that is really working still.
Well, I know you and your team do a great job, so I know we're tackling the problem.
I have a very skilled maintenance person, and I have to say, we saving district a ton of money. I mean, they are willing to come at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever is needed to do, and they're doing a great job. So I
We
thank them
appreciate
for
it.
that every single day. Makes my life a little bit easier, but also the teachers and everybody else feels more comfortable when they come to school and there is heat there.
Thank you.
I have a question about does somebody else have a question? Okay, I have a question about the repaving, specifically for the high school and the middle school side lot. By any chance, did the repaving and relining increase any parking spaces?
No, it did not.
Don't shoot the messenger, again. It's a hot button topic that I get every year. Why isn't there more parking for seniors, et cetera, so.
It's the same square footage and the same
Okay.
inches allowed per parking space, so it's hard to do.
Got it.
I got
Thank
a
you.
quick, oops, sorry, you guys. I got a quick question regarding the capital project. Remind me again, we have a field house in there with permanent bathrooms, right?
Correct.
Eventually?
Correct.
Okay, so the bathrooms we purchased, what's the shelf life on something like that?
So it's going to take us at least about 2 years to build those permanent bathrooms, and when they are built and fully functional, then we can evaluate where there is a need or what can we do with the ones that we have.
Okay.
5 years?
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Rodriguez, and my colleagues. This is a technology budget. Thank you for the opportunity to present it. Technology budget truly is a collaborative budget. Process starts around November timeline, working with the teachers, department chairs, technology coaches, building administrators, directors, and ultimately my colleagues, more importantly, assistant superintendents of curriculum and instruction. Technology is a tool that truly enhances the instruction, and that's really the goal that we try to focus in last quite a few years. If we use technology to enhance the instruction and enhance the safety, we are in good shape. And that's really the starting point for all of us. It also prepares our students for their next step in their career and college readiness. One of the pieces that I really wanted to highlight in this process is our high school student help desk. This is our 3rd year and we are very, very few school districts to have a student help desk, at least that maybe one of 3 in 10 counties that I know of. This is a fully run student help desk. This is over 3 years, third year doing this. 13 students. We started with 4 students about 3 years before, and now we have 13 students. And first time we have 4 girls on the help desk, which is, I'm super proud of that. It's a big shout out to our librarians in the high school. They support us day in, day out in technology, and high school administrators, along with my colleagues for CNI side. Really, the goal we started with in mind is how do we teach our students the real world experience and something that they can take with them. And really, the support is for the students, by the students. And that was the original thought process. This process started with the tech coaches, Mr. Garan, about 4 years before, and then we have really taken off that and then really run with this process. And some of these students are part of now with the high school business department work study program that started last year. So these kids are really gaining the real world experience. The 2 kids who graduated last year, they actually continued this as a small business in their dorm. And that kind of makes us really, really powerful that there is always a process in place, but they're taking it with them in supporting. One of the students reached out to say, hey, I'm glad that I learned how to replace the screen on my iPhone because I can help out by charging them, by some of these students. So, and here they really learn these skills from us. There is a dedicated technology department person there, and he does a fantastic job of bringing the students and teaching them. Also, generally the seniors, they actually go out and really go through the process of recruiting the new students. This is also the first year we have sophomore, junior, and senior. Generally, this high school, up to this year was only seniors, but now we have 3, and we are looking for freshmen if they have a space in their schedule. The instruction comes first, but when they have some time in between, if they have a study hall, they can always come out and help out on the help desk. Technology department, so in general, technology department is supporting the systems, is it up front or behind the scene. They're divided in 4 different subcategories: data, network, hardware, and instructional. It supports a variety of different, ranging from supporting the student management system, working on a various cybersecurity initiative, supporting the telecommunication, supporting the various classroom technologies like the smart panels, and ultimately enhancing the instruction by either pushing the new curriculum, new standards for computer science or digital fluency, or supporting the variety of different instructional software. And that's really the goal of technology. How do we enhance the instruction in the classroom while safe in terms of cybersecurity? Some of the other technology initiatives that we have underway is Digital Den. This is our 2nd year. Last year was our 1st year. We started with the North Main. When we went about 4 years before one-to-one, what we realized that our traditional computer labs kind of are arcade, and we need to revamp that. So we came up with the thought process of Digital Den, which is active learning spaces in the school. It's the same room, but it's just changed in terms of flexible environment, movable furniture, different type of the heights of tables and chairs. Our kids learn different kids learn different ways. So last year was a pilot for at the Northman. This year we are very close to finish this new Digital Den at Central Valley. Next year we will be actually working with our Pine Tree team, working with the Pine Tree, Dr. Morales. We already have a design in place, and we will be rolling out that starting in the summer. We also continue supporting the families who do not have the internet at home by providing them a MiFi with our T-Mobile MiFis. Same way, we continue to provide the one-to-one student devices rollout when the student is enrolled and have an assigned schedule in Monroe Woodbury. If the student is in kindergarten or 1st grader, gets the iPad, and then from 2nd to 12th grades, get the Chromebook. Continue on a smart panel rollout. This is our 5th year, and all K-5 classrooms, the instructional spaces in the buildings have smart panels now. In middle school, we are almost done. It's about 85% done. And then we started this year at the high school. It's about 20%. The goal is to have a 7-year replacement plan for this panel. So by the time we will finish the high school in the next couple of years, we'll start replacing probably in Sapphire and Smith Clove, the original smart panels. Last year, we came to you with the E-rate infrastructure funding. So E-rate is a federally funded initiative. Every 5 years, the district would get some lump sum money based on the free and reduced data, free and reduced student count. We are qualified for $1.1 million with a 50% down payment. So last year, we budgeted for that. And earlier this year, we purchased, majority of that funding went to network switches. These are the switches behind the scene when it function. Nobody should know where it's even there. That's really the purpose. So we replace in the month of December and January, we replace all the instructional buildings network switches except the high school. Our goal for high school is to take the spring break time and then replace the remaining switches. We are also in a process of upgrading our wireless controller that will increase the life of our wireless infrastructure as well. Cybersecurity and data privacy, so that's another subset of enhancing the instruction. The instruction can only be delivered when it's safe and secure in terms of cyber world. So this is a basic, this is kind of my triangle, I guess, the cyber defense. I was just thinking when you say that you did budget triangle. So it's a cyber defense, let's call triangle. And ultimately, it really starts from bottom up. It's the variety of different systems and the solutions we have. We have a different host systems and different application systems that we support, not only their application defense, but with the endpoint detection, the email security, network monitoring, and ultimately, how do we leverage the AI tool that we have implemented in the last couple of years to enhance the cyber intelligence that are coming from the state and local government agencies. Ed Law 2D compliance. So this is the Education Law 2D went in effect in 2014, and some of these initiatives are directly related to that. It enhances the cybersecurity, ultimately provide a safe and secure environment for our stakeholders to learn and teach. We recently, earlier this month, we completed the self-assessed National Cybersecurity Review. It is a self-assessed tool that allows us to basically watch our journey. There are 5 pillars of the NIST cybersecurity framework. That is what we follow. It's basically the identify, protect, detect, and recover. 2 days before, NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, released the newer version. It's called NIST CSF 2.0, and they added one more category called govern. So basically, they tied all the 5 functions into the governing, and then allows us as a school district or any organization who follows the NIST CSF is how are you as an organization governing the variety of different functions of the NIST assessment. We continue to enhance our phishing campaigns for our students and staff, and I know sometimes it gets too much, but we are really, really doing well. Our average, until this point, our average phishing rate is about 5.6%, which is below the industry standards of about 7.5%. There are many research has been done about the most of the time the malware or ransomware. It's 76% of the time it comes to the email. So by enhancing this phishing campaign, we are educating our students and staff, and big kudos to all our staff, not that much to students yet, to reporting that, but also really being vigilant about it. Like we get on a variety of different requests to say, hey, can you check this out and make sure it's legit or it's safe. Mandated cybersecurity training, we have close to 1,600 employees who complete once a year the cybersecurity training. And again, it enhances the safety and security for the district. Process improvement for vetting the variety of different software and data privacy agreements. We are continuously enhancing how do we make sure that the current vendors are compliant with the Ed Law 2D. We use a tool called Symmetric to see our compliance in the Ed Law 2D, and we continue to monitor a variety of different solutions like our student management system, our financial solutions, to enhance the compliance in terms of Ed Law 2D. The preliminary technology recommendation in Mr. Cahill's word, bluff, it's 0.92% increase. Every year, we try to assess how do we purchase our variety of different educational technology solutions. And we try to push our local RICs and BOCES to leverage the bargaining power of using it. If we are the only district buying a solution A, then we try to figure out another BOCES or RIC that can we join them in purchasing. So through that lens, you see a shift in terms of certain budget code in instructional and increase into the reduction in the instructional and increase in the data processing code, but it's purely in terms of leveraging where it should be budgeted and where can we leverage the purchasing through the local BOCES and RICs. By doing that, not only it allows us the affordable solution, but it also eligible for the BOCES aid for the following year. Library media, big shout out to well, thank you, Laura and Kathy, to being here, especially Laura, because she's retiring, class of 2024. It's shaping up to be a great class. But because of their support, she's always prudent in terms of enhancing what can we do better, but also looking at the variety of different usage report. Are we using all the solutions that we currently have? What does the usage look like? And can we actually shift it if the usage is low? And what can we do better in terms of the solutions that we are using? Central printing, we continuously monitor the amount of printing jobs that goes through. We have a centralized system called Page DNA, and it allows us to monitor every single print job that goes through the central printing. We are continuously supporting different school buildings in terms of if we need to be printed, it's okay, but can it be pushed to central printing because the cost difference is significantly higher. We're reducing our central printing with the 1.03%. So bottom line, it's an increase of just about $40,000 total with a 0.92% increase. Technology in the district, this is just an overview of variety of different solutions, different devices we have in the districts. It's close to, it's about 10,381 devices. Just about 4.5 years before, this number was really about 3,800 devices. So the big shift is obviously through the COVID, we went one-to-one, and we keep enhancing how do we give out the devices, not to our, most of our TAs have it, all our teachers have it, almost all our students have our devices as well. And then through the help desk and technology department, we support those devices on a very regular basis as well. Help desk tickets, so we monitor the efficiency and also the support timeline. How are we doing in terms of when a teacher open up a ticket, how long it takes for us to respond it. This is also another way of looking, if we all of a sudden see a specific type of the tickets related to a type of solution, there may be something happening that we might not just know that. This is just the last 3 years of data, and generally it ranges in 7,000. This year is a little bit higher, but it's average out about 7,000 tickets per school year. And this includes not only the school dude, which is the system we use for monitoring the tickets, but also our student help desk and the repairs or walk-in repairs that our technology TAs does it on day in, day out as well. Libraries are a flexible, vibrant place. This is the place for the students to be. In last 5-6 years, we have done really good job. It's actually kudos to Laura and her team for all the librarians. They have shifted in what does the library look like today. About 6 years before, we started 1 year at a time in enhancing our current library to become a more flexible seating and really upbeat design of the libraries. This is the year we recently finished the middle school library, so if you have not checked it out, I highly encourage that when you are in the middle school next time, please stop by in the library and then see the transformation that happened in the last couple of years. Next year, we are scheduled to change this in high school, and then we'll go back to the Sapphire. This allows our students with a quiet area or small group areas, makerspace. My favorite part is the chessboard in the corner of the middle school. The expanded in-person library, we have a variety of different library programs. It's Read Aloud. Earlier this month, we had the authors on site in middle school and high school, and Read Aloud Day was celebrated in every single library throughout the district. The librarians do a phenomenal job, not only supporting technology in terms of Chromebooks or iPads, but also to keep an eye on electronic books as well as the hard-code printed books as well. These are the number of last 3 years of the circulation, and as you see, that after the COVID, the numbers keep increasing year after year, and the goal is to keep enhancing this number and supporting not only just the electronic, but also the print media to all of our students and staff as well. Any questions? Thank you for your time.
I would have one, the help desk. So the students who are participating in that, do we do anything for them in recognition of their support to the school?
We, not officially, but maybe that's a good question that we should recognize them.
I mean, is it a club? Is there funding, a budget to that, you know?
What we have done, last year was our first year, that when the student graduate and happen to be on the help desk, every summer we hire the summer staff at the MCC, because we, in general, every summer, we actually reset 2,000 devices. So we bring the old devices, we clean it up, or we deploy the new devices. So we hire 4 to 5 students, and last couple of years, these students are coming directly from the help desk. So in their mind, the incentive is, if I finish this, I can actually work over the summer in the computer department, and if I'm going into computer science or computer engineering, it would look phenomenally good on my resume or my college letter. So that's kind of their incentive, but I'll talk internally with my colleagues and then see if there is something better that we can do.
It just may be something for those kids who are giving away their, the study hall to support, like,
Good thought.
whatever club funding that's used to, pizza or something easy, I mean.
Oh, no, that we do it.
Okay,
No,
good.
but it's not like a formal recognition.
Or just
And-
even a
and-
certificate or something of recognition that we can,
And you have mentioned this, when we added the work-based learning program up at the high school, students can opt, instead of having a study hall in their schedule, they can opt to work at the student help desk, because the help desk is now officially an approved work-based learning location, because it's supervised by one of our business teachers in addition to the technology staff. So they also earn a half a credit of an elective
great.
sitting in the class, and it appears on their transcript as part of the work-based learning program. So it incentivizes them, rather than just having study hall. It's not just, I'm leaving my study hall and going to work at the help desk. It appears in their transcript, they get a half a credit elective towards graduation for each semester that they participate in that.
That's great. I mean, these kids are going above and beyond, which we appreciate and is helping us and saving money to taxpayers, because you don't have to hire staff as many.
I don't, not necessarily always, but I think this is a great experience. I think the staffing wouldn't impact much, but certainly it helps us, yes.
Yes.
That's great.
As long as they don't start a war games type of situation in college.
They're too young for that.
I was not
really.
gonna get that right.
I know, I'm dating myself.
Yeah, right, yeah. They might.
Thank you.
Righty. Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to present the transportation budget for you this evening. I do not have any triangles in my presentation, but I do have some
always
good
next year.
pie charts.
You got a pie chart.
There's no next year.
You're fine.
But you have a pie chart. I do, I have an awesome pie chart.
It's got triangles in it.
We're going to jump right in with contract transportation, which, if you're following along on a budget report, this would be function code 5540. So what we have here is the growth over the last several years in our yeshiva student population. We had a 24.17% increase for this school year, and we are anticipating another 24% increase for the following year. I mean, generally speaking, it could be between 25 and 31%, which is historically how it's been growing. So just so you know, the New York State Education Department, they say that the district is obligated to provide this service so long as all the criteria is met by the parent. They're registered, they've applied by the deadline of April 1st, that they're residents of the district. So we are obligated to provide this transportation. Included in here are on another note, we had eliminated Don Bosco route that had dissolved last year because we didn't have anybody that lived within 15 miles. And so now we do, and they've applied for transportation, and so they will be eligible for transportation for the 24-25 school year.
What's the cost on that?
It was about $118,000 last year, because that also includes the 5 o'clock activity bus, because they are entitled to it on the same days that.
Is that one student?
One student is eligible, so then we'll have the centralized pickup point again. And we were carefully verified, that everything was in order.
Thank you.
So if other students who are not eligible go to Don Bosco, they would meet at the centralized?
Yes, they have, that's their only option, is to go
Right.
to the centralized pickup point, and the parents are very happy with that.
I'm sure they are.
Yes, yeah. And then, so the contract transportation cost drivers also include high-cost transportation. I'll explain high-cost transportation. We have more than 100 students who attend programs in Westchester, Sullivan counties, Rockland County, and those are provided mostly through contract transportation. So that includes our students with special needs. We've been working with the BOCES COSER, which is a transportation contract that allows us to share with 18 component districts in BOCES. Unfortunately, the contractor has not been able to successfully provide what our students deserve, which is the best transportation. So that is now out to bid again. I know I just said this to you the year before last, but it is now out for a bid again. So right now, we only have, we have about $1 million that we're spending in the BOCES COSER portion of the budget. We were very fortunate to find another very good transportation provider to pick up the slack for them. And even though it's not shareable in the same way as the BOCES COSER, we are still able to share the runs with other schools through, I'm sure you've seen board resolutions come through that we share with maybe Florida or Chester with our contractor. So we don't stop trying. We keep looking for ways to share and to save money. And so this new RFP, I'm sure, could be anywhere upwards of 30% more than what we're paying right now. So if it's $1 million, it'll be $1.3 million. And then, of course, this also includes our displaced students. And so they come and go, and they're also eligible for transportation. Back. Now this way. Here's the pie chart. So included in contract transportation, it's not only about our non-public school students. We also have our field trips in this code, and our athletics, other non-public programs, our high-cost transportation that we just talked about, the yeshivas, the COSER. So they all live within this 5540 code. It's the biggest part of our budget. Okay, so new bus purchases. This year, we're asking for the board to allow us to purchase 4 large 72-passenger diesel-powered engine buses and 2 gasoline-powered school bus vans that we buy. We have a standardized fleet, and last year, we tried to we try to replace as many buses as is necessary. We have a fleet replacement program, and a few years back, we did not buy buses, so it will take us a little while to catch up on that, but it was something that we needed to do then. And then we touched a little bit on electric buses, and I'm not going to go too deep because that's a whole other project. But as a stepping off point in the assessment of purchasing electric school buses, we are consulting with our architects. They have specialists, and they're going to work with us to secure funding from NYSERDA's Flex Tech grant, which is basically an assessment of our operation and what kind of power can we provide. So we use the same architects as one of our neighboring districts, and they were able to secure a grant. Our grant would have to be much bigger because our operation is much bigger, but still, we know it can be done. It was the same architect, so they'll know how to get the job done. My assistant, Jessie, she's been working on a fleet study. So she took all of the raw data from our existing bus runs, our literal runs. And we use this, worked with one of our vendors, not somebody who we currently buy buses from, but they are preparing studies for people. And we wanted to see, is it possible with a three-tier system to even run an electric bus? Can we make it through a day? What does it look like? And we literally just got these results, and it's many tabs of data, which we could share with you, I'm sure, I'll share it with Patrick, and then he could share it if he'd like. But it is interesting. It's not impossible. We couldn't do an early dismissal or anything. We could get to school, and we could get home.
Oh.
So in other words, so that's what that's what the analysis is. So
Once you
basically, it tells you when the bus gets back to base in the morning, how much power is left. Because you can't plug every bus in when it comes back. You just can't. You can't take all that power. So you have to figure out the shorter runs, won't have to plug in, all the plugging in and out will have to be a system. And we did have a couple of runs, and I'll just give you a quick example. We have a route it's the driver does a high school run and then drops off, then comes back and brings up the AM BOCES. No, they bring up the AM BOCES to, CTEC, and then they come back, and then they have a midday, that's out. They'd have to switch buses to be able to accomplish what they can accomplish now. And so it's very interesting to see, and it tells you what you're anticipated to have left. We've looked at things like battery life, and an average large bus like we have in our fleet, 72 passenger, they take two batteries. The batteries last 5 years. They're $80,000 a piece.
Ouch.
The bus won't even be reimbursed with aid for 12 years. It will take to get our money back, because now they're extending that piece out as well, because it's so much money. And just as another example, we did ask for a quote for an electric bus, 72 passenger, and also our van. Just exact same thing, but with electric. And what we pay for a diesel bus in this budget would be $195,000. And what we would pay this year for an electric bus would be $475,000 without the charging system. That's without the charger.
Right, but the power companies aren't going to be able to supply the power anyway.
Right.
And the bus companies are not going to be able to buy the bus anyway.
Right,
So if we can't buy the bus and we can't plug it in, so
The
it doesn't
roads
make a
can't
whole
take
lot
it
of sense
either.
to buy an electric bus.
right, but
No matter what New York State says.
exactly, but what Patrick is facing now is like on the SAMS report that the business office has to file this year, we have to put down step by step every single thing that our district has done to prepare ourselves for this coming change. So
Right,
we,
Jeff
as much
Reynolds
as
said,
we
"Don't
just
buy
want
the
to say,
Yeah.
no, we're not doing, no.
I'll
you
take the
know?
hit.
No, it's the same argument
is-
that we have with the
is-
cars.
Right.
If you want us to change to electric, and I do want to save the environment,
Yeah,
of course,
We
but
all do.
then can't you do something about lowering the cost?
It's all part of the green initiative.
I was gonna
Green as
say.
in money.
Yeah.
I see.
Okay, so, so just, we
had
are
to
working
go
on, we're
green,
doing
I'm
our due
sorry.
diligence, what we have to do, and that's why we are asking this year to buy diesel and gasoline engine vehicles, because we just have to get through this first.
Second that motion.
Okay. All right, so, this chart gives us a visual representation of the percentage of each part of the $15,011,210 transportation budget. So you could see 82.63% is contract transportation. The 5510 code, which is transportation and supplies, everything from fuel to insurance, that is 15.86% of the budget. And then the garage building, where the buses are worked on, 1.5% of the budget. And then just to quickly go over the year-to-year increase, the 5510 increase was driven mostly by, CPI, cost of tires, as well as the addition of consultants for the transition to the electric vehicles. And then the 5530 code, there was a small decrease. I checked with our mechanic. Our head mechanic felt that the shop was well-equipped at this time, and he didn't request any, large equipment. And so that was helpful this year. And then 5540, again, increase driven by additional students attending non-public programs, and anticipated CPI is going to be between 3% and 4% this coming year. And then again, Patrick mentioned earlier, the personnel budget will be included in Mrs. Hawks' presentation, the 20th? Yeah.
20th, Martha. Yep.
All right. And so the total year-to-year increase would be 16.99%. And I think, so I just wanted to say a special thank you. You know, I will be retiring this year, and, you know, Monroe Woodbury has fantastic staff, the bus drivers, there's no other drivers like who we have here, and I've been so proud to work with them. The monitors, the drivers, I don't want to forget anybody, the mechanics, the dispatchers, everybody. So as a team, we do amazing work, and we always ensure that the students are in good hands and they're receiving the safest and most efficient transportation that they can possibly get. So thank you, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
My only question is, can you please stay?
I know. but
Just
the
for
only-
5 more years, and at the most, no more than 15.
No, I'm so tired, no. Anyway, but thank you, it's been a pleasure. Is there any questions? Okay,
No.
thank you.
You all did a great job.
you.
Thank you so
Aw,
much.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Dawn.